Hi, I'm Eve, a finance student studying abroad at Peking University, and today I'm going to be reacting to my Why I'm Moving to China video that I filmed 6 months ago. I have my handy dandy video here, and let's just start watching. I'm not sure what to expect, but we'll see. I'm 18, I just graduated high school, and I'm leaving the country for at least the next 6 years of my life. At least I think so. I think it's really funny because I just want to say that at the time I was considering doing med school, and so that's why I say the next 6 months. But things have quite changed from there, and as you probably heard from the beginning of the video, I'm now a finance student and I'm on the finance track, so not doing med school, but the med school at Beida, if I had transferred, would have been 6 years, and so I would have been there for my undergrad, or they give like an MBBS, which is like Master's of Bachelor of Surgery or something like that, and that would have been 6 years. So just to clarify. In my mind, I've already made the decision, but it just seems like there are constantly people around me telling me that I'm making the wrong choice, that I need to reconsider my options, that I need to really think it through before I make a life-changing decision that I could regret for the rest of my life. I think that's really funny because I totally sympathize with past me right now, because I just remember how frustrating it was to like have so many different opinions, and like even now that I'm like kind of like in at the university, it's kind of like there's still mixed opinions of whether or not that was a good choice. And now it's actually not just like the people that I know. I feel like it's people that I don't even know that are kind of like maybe giving their thoughts on my decision. And also I feel like just exteriorly people around me, even in China, like some of my classmates are like, why did you come here if you were in the US, if you had like you were in such a great position? And I'm just kind of like, that's a great question, but I think that it's been a lot for sure. So you may be wondering, why am I considering leaving the US in the first place? There are so many great things about the country, and I've grown up here my entire life, so why leave? Well, that's a question that I've asked myself time and time again, and a question that my family members and people around me have asked me too. Well, long story short, it's because of college. To take you back to the beginning, like most other high school seniors, the first half of my senior year I spent applying to several colleges. Several colleges is an understatement by a long shot. I applied to way too many. I'm not sure if I talk about this in a second here, but it was definitely more than 20 schools, which if you are planning on applying to college, I don't really recommend. For me, it was more than 20. My weekdays and weekends consisted of studying for any exams I had, in addition to grinding college essays, preparing for interviews, and crying my eyes out when things got too stressful. I just think it's so funny to see my past self talking about this stuff, because I feel like my past self, like talking about crying about like high school and stuff, now seems crazy to me after what I've been through at PKU for the first semester. It's been a lot, and I feel like there were definitely more tears involved in that first semester than I feel like throughout high school, but that's a story for another time. Unlike most other high school seniors, I decided to apply to one college outside of the United States, specifically in China. So I guess like the reason why I did it in the first place was because, as you can probably tell, I am Chinese ethnically, and my parents grew up in China, and I've pretty much been born and raised in the US. So I say pretty much born and raised in the US because I was actually born in Canada, for anyone who's wondering, so that's nice. But I guess like I've always had like that connection to my Chinese ethnic heritage, on top of the fact that I had lots of fun visiting China as a little kid, and I made lots of fun memories, which I've actually documented, by the way, in a video. So if you're interested, you can find that video here if you'd like to check it out. So anyways, yeah, I was like, okay,
you know what, I like China, I am Chinese, I feel like I might as well apply to a school in China.
Interesting logic there. I mean, I suppose it makes sense to some degree. Honestly, I still can't believe I decided to pack my bags and move all the way to China, and it's actually crazy how much has changed, but that's why I think it's so important to record all of your memories and just kind of keep track of them. And that's actually why I'd like to introduce you to the sponsor of today's video, EaseUS RecExperts. And actually, I'm using EaseUS RecExperts to record this video. It's a super easy screen recorder that lets you capture anything in high quality, whether it's recording your reaction videos like this one, taking notes, or saving online lectures for later. Setting it up is literally just download, click record, and you're good to go. There aren't any watermarks and there's no super complicated settings or anything like that. I feel like the interface is very easy to navigate and helpful for anybody who might want to do any sort of screen recordings. Plus, it has really cool features like background noise removal as well as kind of virtual backgrounds if that's something that you wanted to add into your videos. And I feel like it would have been pretty cool to have this tool back when I was recording my college decision reaction videos, because it can help kind of screen record, and I could have had like the actual page of the college portal while I was reacting to whether or not I got rejected or accepted. And so overall, you can just use EaseUS for practically anything in terms of taking course notes, creating study guides, or even making study video tutorials if that's something you might be interested in. So if you want to try it out, click the link down below in the description to try EaseUS for free and see how it might make your life a little bit easier. Thank you again to EaseUS for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to this video. And I applied to Peking University, or Beida, which was a school in Beijing, and all of my close family members lived in China in Beijing. So I was like, okay, if like so basically all of my family, first of all, like other than like my mom, my dad, and my brother, lives in China. So I think that going to China was also kind of like being closer to my family, is how I was thinking about it at the time. And my grandparents are in Beijing as well, so that was something that I knew that I could fall back to if I ever needed any help. I actually did end up going. Like, that wouldn't be a bad choice because I would have family and a support system while I went there. And I guess on top of that, Beida, or Peking University, is a very good university. It's like one of the top ranked schools in China, so I knew that like if things didn't really work out in the US or I didn't get accepted into any of the schools that I would be interested in going to, that would be a good option as well. The school year went on and I was offered an interview in like February or March, and so at that point I'd already received like, I believe it was February that I was offered the interview for, and I think I do go on to talk about how like I had already gotten acceptances from several US colleges, so I was like in a pretty chill spot at that point. Like several offers from multiple colleges in the US that I thought I could see myself going to for the most part, and so I was like less like excited, I guess you could say, to participate in that interview. I don't know if any of you guys have ever felt that too, but it's just kind of like once you have like pretty decent options, like your backup plans just don't seem as enticing. Yikes, calling Beida a backup plan is actually crazy. That's how it was for me. I guess you couldn't 100% say that Peking University was my backup. Okay, thank you for clarifying. Like in case things in the US didn't work out, at least that's what I thought it was going to be. And so in the end, I actually did end up doing the interview. It was all in Mandarin, and I honestly kind of struggled. I did not know what they were saying at first. Again, struggle was an understatement. I think I also go on to talk about why it was a struggle. Like the part of the interview where they had like a question and then we were supposed to kind of like debate it, like they gave us 2 minutes to consider like what our argument was and what we were going to say, and I literally spent those 2 minutes trying to figure out what the question was saying. It was pretty bad. And I'm not even joking, like that interview was probably one of the most like, I don't want to say humiliating, but I feel like because the other people in the interview seemed to know what they were talking about, and so I was just kind of like, what am I doing? And like at the time, especially because I was so busy with like high school and stuff, like I hadn't really practiced my Mandarin, and speaking Mandarin at home was kind of hard sometimes because sometimes it's just like defaulting to English. So I don't know how I passed the interview, but let's move on. And then when we actually went on to debating, I was just kind of like very confused because I didn't fully understand the question by the end of the 2 minutes, so I had to kind of listen to what other people were saying. And then even after that, I was like a little bit confused, but I was able to kind of like work out some sort of like argument to support my claims. And then flash forward a month or two, I was accepted to Peking University despite my outrageous interview process. But that was super exciting for me. But again, like I had already had a lot of options open because this was like April 9th or something, when I received my acceptance, my conditional acceptance, which meant that they would accept me so long as my final transcript was, like, I didn't fail a bunch of classes. Right, and I did not fail a bunch of classes, which is great. And I do want to say that this was around April. I think at this point, the only decisions that I was waiting for were IVs and stuff, if I'm remembering the timeline correctly, or I may be completely forgetting. I feel like it's been so long, but yeah, that's just kind of like, it's crazy to look back on, like, how stressed out I was at the time and, like, trying to make decisions. And also, I just remember throughout senior year, like, constantly being like, oh my gosh, this decision's almost coming out, that decision's almost coming out, and just, like, now in hindsight, it seems like it was all like a fever dream or something. Which totally made sense, but, like, I'd already been accepted to multiple colleges, and if you're interested in which colleges, I also made a college decision reaction video, which is right here, if you would like to see that and check that out as well. But yeah, so I guess, like, at that time, it was, like, a mixture of, like, excitement, but also kind of, like, not really excited, just kind of like, oh, it is what it is, it's, like, whatever. Like, I don't know, it's just kind of like when you start doing... Oh, by the way, if you have watched, like, my Peking University videos, but you're curious about, like, which colleges I was actually accepted to and rejected from in the US, do go check that college decision reaction video out. It's very, like, nostalgic. I don't think I'm using that word right, but... doing something, but then you're like, what's even the point of this, and then you just kind of give up. I guess that's kind of how I felt at the time. But this is where, like, all of the opinions started pouring in like a freaking tsunami, I swear to God. It was like my parents were telling me, oh my gosh, this is such, like, a great accomplishment. This is one of the best universities in China. You should definitely go. Like, my dad was like,
if I were you, like, I would go, but, like, I'm not telling you should go, but, like, I would personally go, and I think that's the best option.
so, like, what are you telling me, Dad? Like, I think you're telling me that you want me to go. And then my mom was like,
yeah, like, you would be stupid to give up this opportunity. It's like rejecting Harvard.
And I was like, Mom, it's not exactly like rejecting Harvard. And she was like,
it kind of is. Like, it's the best university in China. Like, why would you not go?
And then my grandparents were like, that impression was hilarious. I think I had a really fun time editing this part. And I'm honestly still pretty proud of it. Yeah, like, at first they were like,
okay, that's great, like, but, like, we think maybe it might be better to stay in the US.
And then, like, right after we hopped off that call on WeChat, which is, like, kind of like the WhatsApp or Instagram that people use in China, and so after we got off that call, my grandparents texted me, like, maybe 10 minutes later, like,
hey, actually, we thought about it, and we think that you should actually go to the school in China. We think you should come to Beijing. We think you should go to Beijing.
And I was like, okay. That was literally my reaction. Like, I honestly, like, I think it's probably because they were also older too, and I mean, I don't know, I feel like just, like, the mixed opinions, I honestly wish I kind of, like, had maybe listened to myself a little bit more in hindsight. I feel like other people's opinions definitely influenced me more than I would have liked, but I do think in the end I did make the decision myself, but definitely, like, it's impossible not to listen to what other people are saying, like, what other people are advising you, I feel like, sometimes, and that does play a factor, I feel like, in terms of what end decision you do make in the end. Just lots and lots and lots of different opinions, and at this point, like, I told some of my friends about it too, and, like, they were very supportive, but, like, I don't think any of them actually thought that I was going to travel all the way across the country, or not even the country, sorry, all the way across the world to go to this university and go to this new country that I wasn't honestly entirely familiar with. And, like, all the while, I just felt like in my family, like, most people weren't thinking from my perspective. They weren't really considering, like, what would be the best for me. They were just, like, forcing their own thoughts and opinions on me, and to some extent just thinking about themselves, right? Like, I don't mean to say that my parents and my grandparents and all that are, like, selfish people, because they are definitely not. They are definitely, like, the most caring and supportive people out there, but I just didn't feel like they were really considering me and what I wanted when they were telling me to make a decision that would impact the rest of my life, possibly. It was just, like, a very frustrating time, on top of the fact I was already trying to decide, like, which schools I would go to in the US, like, which one I would pick, because the deadline for that was, like, May 1st. And so I just kind of put it aside for a little bit. I was like, okay, I don't feel like going to China is the best option, given I already had good options in the US. Yeah, I think that when I first got the acceptance, I was like pretty convinced that I wasn't going because I did feel like I had great options in the US and I've lived here my entire life and I feel like everything is just more familiar. And even now, I still do feel that way. And so it's just kind of like making that move to go to China. Like, I feel like because I've always been, I don't know, I've always been more of a like wanting to take on challenges, I suppose. And I don't want to like just kind of sit and like be comfortable. Like, comfort is obviously so important, but I think that I do enjoy a challenge. And I think that that's probably kind of why I never like completely outruled China and also just like the possibility, the risk, but the possibility associated with going there. And I was just kind of like, okay, well, let's put that aside. Let's first decide which school I want to go to in the US, and then let's pick it up when I maybe like go back to China during the summer because we had already had a trip planned. And so my mother, I think, was the most insistent out of all of them. She just kept telling me that I should go to Beida or like go to Cornell, you know, just like that Asian stereotype of like go to the best university, right? Prestige matters, which I feel like at the time I couldn't really understand my mom because she was just being very like on and off and on and off of what she wanted me to do. But I think that now looking back on it, like I'm sure that she just wanted like what was best for me. And I think that my indecisiveness sometimes probably comes a little bit from her. And I don't know, even now she's like kind of like asking me if I want to consider transferring because like I've told her about how difficult being at Peking University can be sometimes. And I do think that she wants me to be happy and she wants the best for me, but sometimes it's just kind of like it's hard. Which I personally don't really agree with, and I just like I felt really frustrated with her at the time because I just felt like she wasn't really like stepping in my shoes and considering the situation. She was just wholly like telling me what to do based on her perspective, which like I can understand to some extent, but at the same time it was just kind of like, mom, like why can't you understand, like this is my future, this is like the next 4 or 6 years of my life, like why can't you just like listen to what I have to say? And like I don't know if other moms are like that too, but just like I'm sure some of them are like that. I've heard plenty of stories from my friends. Sometimes I feel like people in general, I think they sometimes have trouble understanding different perspectives and just realizing that there are different opinions outside of their own little bubble. And I guess that's just how it was for my parents to some extent, more so on my mom's side. Eventually, I went back to China early June and I visited the school. I went to Beida. Going back to China early June was for like family vacation and visiting my grandparents, obviously, and my uncles and aunts and cousins and such. To their main campus. I also went to Beida University's medical school because they're two separate like campuses, and I honestly really liked it. Like it felt like very I don't really know how to explain it, but I just felt like that was somewhere that I could see myself staying for the next 6 years because for international students at medical school, they have to do it for 6 years and not 5. And I also talked to the professor about like, 'cause I think I do want to say like me like being like, oh my gosh, I could actually see myself here. This seems like so cool. I do think that obviously a part of it probably had to do with like the fact that it was new and the fact that I'd never experienced college before. And I feel like just being on that college campus and being in China, like a country, a place that I liked, kind of like made me just like not think about all the other problems and struggles and stuff. And I just think that because it was fresh and new and something that I'd never experienced before, that kind of influenced the way that I was thinking and the end decision that I made. But I mean, now that I have been on campus for about 4 months now, it's not as fresh and new, you could say. And I would say that, especially because it was colder during this first semester, towards the end it did kind of get a little bit like cold and slightly lonely, I guess, just missing home and also with the classes and stuff. But I will say that overall it was an amazing time and I have made amazing friends and celebrated my birthday over there, and I was actually super scared but to be like not at home, but it was actually really great in the end. So here's my dog. Jelly, want to say hi? She doesn't want to say hi. He taught international students as well, and I actually also observed a class, and I was like, okay, this is like pretty good. Like, I don't really understand the lectures completely, but I think over time this is something that I could get adapted to. And so then that's when I started, my mindset like started to shift. I was like, maybe going to China wouldn't be necessarily like a bad thing. Maybe that's something that I could actually consider doing and like spending the next years of my life in China, in Beijing, with my family. And also another thing I would say is less important, but the food was like amazing. It was actually so good compared to like American like cafeterias, on a different level. Compared to the food that I had at UT, sorry UT, like, you're a great school, but I have to say that your food that was served at the cafeteria or like the dining halls wasn't up to par with that of Beida's, in my opinion. And so, yeah, and I would still agree with that. Even after being at Beida for so long, like, I feel like there's just so many different cafeteria options, and it's just, I think I like the food better. Maybe it's because, like, I like Asian food better, but regardless. After I went to the school, I felt like I wanted to go to Beida. Like, I was interested in coming to Beijing. And on top of that, like, I had always wanted to become more connected to my culture, to my ethnicity, to my language, to the Chinese language. I speak Mandarin pretty fluently, I would say, but just not to the point where it's like I can talk about very sophisticated concepts. I thought when I was contemplating this, I was like, I think it'd be really cool to get to have the opportunity to get an education in Chinese in China. Yeah, I really did think that getting to take college classes in Mandarin, like, it was a very cool concept to me at the time. And I don't think I really kind of like truly like thought it through in terms of like how challenging it would be, because it is very, very challenging. But I would say that my Mandarin has improved a lot in terms of like my writing and my reading and my speaking, but it's definitely still lagging compared to all the other students on the Beida campus. But I think that's to be expected, and I will say that in terms of that, I do think that going to Beida has helped improve my Mandarin. Have that international experience and broaden my perspective, because like my whole life I've lived in Texas, which there's nothing wrong with that, but at the same time, like, after that experience, I really wanted to broaden my perspective and have a change of environment outside of Texas. I will say that I did really, really want that, but I think that now that I've been away from home, it's honestly like harder than you would think, because I think that was my first time being away from home for so long. And I remember the first week I was just like so homesick. Like, there would be like one or two nights every week for like the first 2 weeks. So I guess like it was just sad. It was hard to be away from home. But I think now, like, after, like, when I actually left Beta, I was like not very homesick anymore. But like now that I'm actually home right now, I'm filming this video, I'm not sure, I feel like I'm not going to be able to post this before I go back to Beta. So that's going to be funny, because I'm going to be editing this and I'm going to be watching myself speak from my home and not be at home. But anyways. And that's when I really started thinking, like, I kind of want to come to Beta. Like, it's something I could definitely see myself doing. And after lots of conversations, I was just like, okay, I think I want to do it. My parents weren't really making the decision for me, and at this time I was also just enjoying time in China and spending time with my family and going out to see like different sites and attractions and things like that. So most people weren't focused in on this issue, but all of that changed when I told people that I had decided that I wanted to come to Beijing, China to continue my college education. And I was like,
I'm coming to China.
And at that point, I felt like everyone had something to say about it. Everyone wanted to give their opinion on what I should or shouldn't do. In the past, my parents were very pushing, like, hey, I think you should come to China. But then once I told them I actually did want to go to China, they were like, I don't know if that's actually the best idea. And yeah, it was actually crazy how quick everyone changed on me. Like, once I was like, hey, I actually want to consider like actually doing this thing. Because I think at the time, like, it's different when you're just saying something like as an idea. Like, people throw out ideas all the time, but then when you're actually implementing that idea and you're actually executing, I feel like it's a completely different ballgame. And I think that probably like subconsciously, like, my parents weren't actually expecting me to be like, yes, I'm going to China, because they know what kind of person I am. I like risk and I like challenges, but I also like being stable, I guess you could say. I also like kind of having some sort of certainty and some sort of grasp of what would come in the future. And I feel like going to China, and even now, it's still like it's up in the air what's going to happen going forward. And then my mom started like telling me about all these negative things about going to China, how stressed out I would be, how difficult it would be for me to compete with all of these top performing students, because the people that go to Peking University are like the top of the top in China for the most part. I don't think I actually realized how smart the people at Beida would be. Like, they're actually geniuses. Like, some of the people, like, I remember when I was watching this show one time for, like, New Year's or something, and there was this guy doing this magic trick, and he had, like, this Sudoku kind of, like, number board or whatever, and it was some kind of, like, calculation. Like, he was doing it by chance, obviously, like, oh, this is magic, but he was literally, like, on the spot doing the calculations in his head. Like, I can't even explain it to you, but it was astounding. And also, like, the people, like, they're just so gifted and talented and smart, and I admire them for that. And she was like starting to make me doubt myself and whether or not I could. And honestly, I still do doubt myself sometimes, but I think that it's just a matter of improving yourself and not comparing yourself to others. Actually, like, adapt to going to school in China. And she was telling me how, like, if I did medical school in China, I might not be able to come back to the US, how residencies don't like people who go to accelerated programs, which technically going to China would be an accelerated program. And residency, what I'm referring to is like medical residency after graduating from med school, because back then, remember, I was considering transferring to the medical school at Beida program because it's only 6 years and not 8 years. And then just like she started giving me all of this information of why I shouldn't go to China, and it was just so frustrating because I had already made this decision, and it was arguably like one of the hardest decisions I had ever made. And now, like, after she was the one that told me that I should come to China, she was now telling me not to go. And like, I love her so much, but like, it was just really frustrating to hear that from her, and how like contradictory those opinions were. And then my grandparents, like, one moment they were telling me, yes, you should come to China, and then they were like, oh, the US is actually better, the US is more advanced, they might give you better education. And then the next they were like, oh, I think you should actually come to China, like, China's not bad, like, we can help spend time with you. And I was just kind of like, look, I love spending time with you, and you guys are my grandparents, I love you so much, but like, me making my education decision, like the decision of like whether or not I should stay in the US or come to China, shouldn't be based on whether or not you can spend time with me. Yeah, I feel like my grandparents were definitely the most inconsistent with what they thought I should do. And like, even now, like the other time that I visited my grandpa, he was like suddenly like, okay, you need to like go back to the US, like you're going back to the US, right? Like, you can't stay in China, like China's not it or whatever. And I was just kind of like, that is not what you told me when I like it's just very confusing. And then also, like, out of the blue, my grandpa was just like, oh, I actually think that you should study engineering. And I was like, I don't think that's gonna happen, but it's just I love them and they want the best for me, but I think they are a little old in terms of like just like consistency. Like, I just don't really know how to explain it, but I just like it was just really hard to have all of these conflicting opinions from these people. And like, I know that it wasn't their fault, and I know that they were just trying. I feel so bad for myself. Like, she seems so stressed out. And I mean, like, the decision was very tough, and I remember how like uncertain I was, and I honestly still am. And I don't know, I think that after having been here for 1 semester, being at Peking University for 1 semester, I'm still not sure if this was quote-unquote the right decision, but I don't regret it because I feel like I've experienced so much that has definitely, like, these experiences are something I could have never gotten if I hadn't gone to study abroad at Peking University. To help me, but it was just really difficult to kind of be around that constantly when you're like already unsure about yourself, when you're already like filled with these doubts and thoughts and concerns, and then having people just kind of like exacerbate that. It was just it was just horrible. And then I guess another thing that really bothered me was like my grandparents telling me, yeah, like I was like, okay, you think I should come to China? Why should I come to China? And then they were like, well, we're here. And I was like, okay. And then they were like, well, if you come to China, then your dad has always wanted to come back to China too, to live here, and like you could help him do that. And that just made me kind of mad.
Because I was like, that's great, like I understand, but also I don't think I should be making my decision for the future and happiness of others.
And when I asked them, like, what other reasons do you think I should come to China, they couldn't give me any. And so that made me like further question like whether my decision was right or not. And it was just like a very invigorating situation, I guess. I do feel like I'm kind of like talking in circles now, like in terms of my frustration, but I think that's kind of what happens. Like you start repeating yourself because like there's just so much going on in your brain and you like don't even know like what like your brain, I couldn't process, and I just kept trying to process, and that's why I was kind of like just talking in circles and confusing myself more, I guess you could say. Like, I understand that they just wanted to help. It just felt like no matter what I did or said or chose to do, someone had something to say about it. And even once I felt like I'd made my decision, someone said something that made me like question it. And it was just so frustrating. But now I think I'm at the point where I'm just like, okay, I need to stop listening to other people and listen to myself. I need to stop focusing on what other people want for me and what they think is best for me, for my future, for my dreams, my goals and aspirations, and I need to start just listening to myself and focusing on what I want for me. Hold on, let's let her finish her thought. Not what other people do. And I think that in life, just in general, like, not just about like this specific situation, people that are gonna give you advice, like, they mean well, and they're probably trying to help you make the decision that they think would be the best for you. But at the end of the day, like, no one is really going to understand you as well as you understand yourself. That's very true, I feel like. But I think sometimes like the hard part is where you don't even understand yourself. You don't even understand what you want, and that's like, I feel like a confusing spot, and I feel like I'm still kind of in that kind of stage where I'm like, I don't really know what I want for myself. I'm not entirely sure what the future holds, and I don't know what the best decision is. But I think it's just a matter of moving forward even when you're uncertain, because challenges will arise and life is not linear. But I think it's just a matter of keep going, fake it till you make it, or whatever. People are going to try to help and make you make decisions, but they're not going to be the ones that have to deal with those consequences later on. They're not going to be the ones that have to live the life that they choose for you, right? You're going to be the one that's going to be living your life and facing consequences, not anyone else. So I guess I just want to say to anyone out there that's making a tough decision, or is going to make a tough decision, or has already made a tough decision, I think it's important to listen to others, right? And consider their opinions and their thoughts and perspectives, but just don't let them completely influence your own opinions and judgment. And don't live your life for others. Live your life for yourself. And I think that's what I'm going to be doing. And while there's still a lot of uncertainty, I'm excited for what the future holds. If you enjoyed this video, Okay, so that's just me talking about liking and subscribing, which, by the way, if you haven't already, please consider doing that for more content. But yeah, I just want to say that, like, at the time, I was definitely very stressed out, and I do totally agree with my past self in terms of, like, live your life for yourself. But obviously, it's easier to say things than actually do things, but I do think that it's so important to make sure that you're just kind of, like, enjoying the moment and not kind of like putting off your happiness, because I feel like it can get so easy to do that. Like, once I get this degree, once I get this promotion, once I reach this goal, then I'll be happy. But really, if we constantly do that, then we'll never be happy. And it's like, even as I'm saying this now, like, I know that it's hard for me to kind of like really understand this message, but I think that it's just doing our best every day and looking forward to what the next day holds. And life is full of possibility. Life is full of ups and downs, goods and bads. And I think it's a matter of accepting the bad and really flourishing and embracing the good that happens. So yeah, that's my why I'm moving to China video. I know I have a part 2, so I might do a reaction video on that if you guys are interested. But thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.